Let's bring right now former U.S. ambassador to Russia. Now the director of the Institute for International Studies at Stanford and NBC News international affairs analyst, and a man, unfortunately, who does understand the Russian mindset because he's seen it in Chechnya up close. He's seen it in Aleppo, and he's seen far too much and understands it all too well. So let me just ask you this morning, Mr. Ambassador, we have so much going on right now. The remarkable images of Boris Johnson and Zelensky walking through the streets of Kyiv could not have happened 2 weeks ago. Russians retreating east. And then, of course, the war crimes on a mass scale in the east as well. Where are we at the start of this week?
Well, those are the two big lists, and then the battle for the future, the Battle of Donetsk is coming. So I think the Battle of Kiev will go down in history as one of the great military defeats of the Russian army. It'll go down in history books in Ukraine as one of the great victories of the Ukrainian army. Let's remember, April 2022, that's the way it'll be written in history books. That's the good news. That's that created the permissive conditions for that walk around the city of Kiev that you just showed. Second, we will also remember these horrific, genocidal, terroristic killings in Bucha, in Kramatorsk, and as you alluded to, in Mariupol, as President Zelensky alluded to. Everybody I talked to in the Ukrainian government says, Mike, Bucha was bad. Mariupol will make it look like something much worse in Mariupol. If we ever see those photos, by the way, because Mariupol is being attacked by the Russians. They couldn't invade the city, so they had to destroy the city. And now third, and I think we'll be talking about this for the next several weeks, both sides are preparing for a major conventional battle to control Donetsk. Putin wants to connect Crimea to Donbass. The Ukrainian forces are moving there. You can see the maps. And I think it'll be a major conventional battle. And as the President Zelensky himself said, they're prepared for the fight. They don't know if they will win.
Well, it depends. So much of that depends, as President Zelensky says, on how much the West sends. We had Admiral Stavridis earlier agreeing with the rest of the panel that it's time to stop relying on old Soviet systems, start sending American systems, start sending NATO systems and training them up. I want to show you another clip. We're talking about history. I want to show you another clip and then have you explain the significance of this extraordinary moment. Let's go.
In this envelope, dear Volodymyr, there is an important step towards EU membership. The questionnaire that is in here is the basis for our discussion in the coming weeks. It is where your path towards Europe and the European Union begins. These are questions that then form the opinion of the European Union as a recommendation to the Council. It will be not as usual a matter of years to form this opinion, but I think a matter of weeks.
You know, Mr. Ambassador, as you know full well, from 45 to 89, it was Berlin that sat on the razor's edge of Cold War tensions between the U.S. and Russia. From 2006 to 2007 to right now, it's been Ukraine. Will they go east? Will they go west? We talk about NATO all the time, and I understand it's important as a defensive alliance, but talk about how significant that clip is. Ukraine getting EU membership.
Well, first, everybody needs to remember that the revolution of dignity back in 2014, when President Yanukovych fled and Vladimir Putin in response invaded, that's when he seized Crimea. That's when he gave a lot of support to these separatists in Donbass. That was sparked by Ukrainians going on to the square, the main square, and saying, after Yanukovych refused to sign an accession agreement with the European Union, people went out on the streets. I know the one that sparked it. His name's Mustafa Naim, and he said, why are we moving away from Europe? We've got to join Europe. That's what that whole revolution was about, and that's one of the things Vladimir Putin was trying to stop. This is a historic moment, and I like the timeline, right? Weeks and months rather than years and decades. And I think this will be, again, remembered as a historic moment when Ukraine finally moves towards eventually joining the European Union.
So, Ambassador, and then there's NATO. Finland says that their government websites were hit by a cyber attack during the time that Zelensky was speaking virtually to Finnish lawmakers. And Russia is now threatening both countries, Finland and Sweden, with military and political consequences if they try and join the alliance. How is NATO responding to these threats at this point?
Well, first of all, remember, Vladimir Putin's, one of his great dreams was to divide NATO, and he'd been making some progress on that. I think we need to remember before this war, in Hungary with Viktor Orban, Salvini in Italy, Le Pen in France, he had these allies that he was building up. And of course, he had Mr. Trump here in the United States, who was also very skeptical about NATO. And he's washed away all that progress by invading Ukraine. So another one of his objectives is gone. And now he has Finland and Sweden talking about joining NATO, and that seems like it has a lot of momentum. I don't think these scare tactics, these cyber attacks, will change the trajectory. And I think he has reunited NATO. I think NATO has new life in a way that it hasn't had for 10 or 15 years.
Kevin.
Ambassador, there was a very interesting piece in the Financial Times over the weekend about the weapons mismatch between some of the NATO countries and Ukraine, and it pointed out that Ukraine's long-range artillery, which is of the Soviet style, takes ammunition which is 152 millimeters wide. Most of NATO's is 155 millimeters wide. They literally can't supply the ammunition to the long-range artillery weapons that the Ukrainians use. How do we get over, given that time is of the essence, how are we going to get over that kind of logistical hurdle in supplying the Ukrainians with what they need for what clearly is going to be a big battle in the east of the country?
Well, it's a very important observation, of course, and that's why so far, up to this point, the NATO alliance has been supplying all this Soviet materiel, right? It's mostly Soviet. You saw that S-300 roll in from Slovakia. That's a Soviet and Russian weapon. That's not a NATO weapon. That's not an American weapon. So there's two things I would say here in response to, it sounds like what you're talking with Admiral Stavridis. On the one hand, we've got to get that Soviet, post-Soviet material moving as fast as possible. The S-300 should have been there 2 weeks ago, not just 2 days ago. And it has to be the heavy material that they need for the war in Donbass, including artillery, including tanks, and if Zelensky had his way, including MiG-29 aircraft as well.
All right, joining us.
Hey, thanks so much for watching our YouTube channel. You can follow up on today's top stories and breaking news, or catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.